Well, hi. Here's the little guy that we're going to paint. I think at the end we'll put a little bit of a background behind him. But that's all I know about that. Okay. We're going to start off, and hopefully you have something to look at there because I don't have room to get him in view. We're going to start off by pre-wetting the duck. You don't need to pre-wet the feet. It doesn't really matter. What I want to do is keep some soft edges on him at first. I experimented with a number of ways of making fur and hair, and they all just came out a little too coarse for a little fuzzy duck. He does have extra hairs sticking out that you could put on him if you choose to later. Okay, so I'm just going to get that wet. And then we're going to get out our new gambage. Move this for a second. I'm going to put out some new gambage, which I've pre-wet before. I'm really recommending that everybody get in the habit of pre-wetting their colors. In fact, when you're coming to class or you're fixing to paint, I'd like to see you pre-wet your colors the night before and keep the lid on. And then re-dampen them, spritz them when you get to class. I'm also recommending, for the first time in years, because I've been cautious about this, I've got a little spray bottle here, and I put about 3 drops of glycerin in it. And I've got the bottle marked because I may not want to do that all the time, but occasionally you might want to use this. It just helps condition your paints. If you put fresh paint in, you might want to mix just a little of this mixture in before you set it to drying. If you use too much of this, you can have a disaster situation. So keep that in mind. You can have paint that never dries. It's like a nightmare. I had someone ruin a whole palette full of paint one time that way. So that's when I kind of quit recommending using it at all to condition your paints. Some pigments dry out, get a lot drier and crumblier than others, and those are the ones that could use, just a teeny bit of extra glycerin, because that'll help slow that down. So I've got these, and I'm going to take part of my new gambage. Oh, I don't have as much new gambage out here as I thought I did. I'm going to just pick up a little of the red and move it in over here. So I kind of have a continuum there. There, I like that. Okay. So I'll be working out of this, and I'll try to set it here where you can see it. Whoops. This duck takes longer than it looks like the duck should. And part of it is the finish on the duck. I spent a lot of time just tweaking and adding, stronger color in some places. Now I'm taking my squeezed out brush and I'm making sure that the edges aren't too wet. So because we're working with a yellow, it's not really critical just how fuzzy the edges are, but most of this yellow could go in under where the grays are. If you wanted to use maybe a little less in some of those areas, you could. See, I'm keeping it a little thinner over here where this area is grayer, and maybe on top of the head, for instance. But a lot of this, I actually wound up going back and adding more yellow to. I would say it's probably your best bet is not to get it on too heavy. And that's the problem, because I can tell one person not to go too heavy, and they're a person who tends to work real pale and light anyway, and they will go too light. And somebody else, if I don't tell them not to work too heavily, they'll put way too much color down. So you know who you are. You just have to figure it out. I got a little yellow there in the eye. Kind of kept it off the bill. You know, you could pull a little in there. About like that. Oh, and look, it's running down in under here. I don't care about that because we need some yellow in that shadow that's underneath him. So that'll be fine. I didn't get much red into that. And I'm looking at him, and you will see that he's got some areas that tend to go a little bit redder. My duck has more red in it than the photo does, and you will have a photo on your phone. I might go ahead and make some of these areas a little richer. There's an area here under the head. You kind of have to give him, gosh, I hate to use the word chin line, a neckline, something that's got a little bit more shadow in it, right in under this area. Otherwise, I don't know, it just changes his proportions. So it's really something to think about later. I don't know why I had to go and mention it now, but just ignore me like you usually do. Ha ha ha. There, okay. And you can see I got a little streaky with this, and I don't care. I am kind of moving it the direction that the down might grow. This area down in under here is going to get a lot darker. So I could add some red in there just to begin to build some of the dark, and I might even put a little bit here for the parts of the shadow. Oh, well, that's redder there, and I don't care. Okay, there. So that's step one on the duck. And he's got quite a bit of a halo around him. Maybe he's got too much. I'll just come in here with some water, clean water. Make sure your brush is really washed out before you do this. These brushes, like the one I'm using right now, this is one of those petite gris brushes, carry so much water that you have to be careful when you rinse them out that you get the center rinsed out. So I'm going to add a little bit of water here. Have I got him where you can see him? Yeah. I keep saying him. I'm just picturing this as a male. I don't know why. And then I'll blot a little bit. See, that'll make me happier. Might be a little much up there. Okay, just need something nice and soft. And now it's time to just let that rest a few minutes and then dry it. Then let the sheen go off first. Okay, now, most of the colors, oh, here's the dried duck, okay. Now, most of the color that we'll work with, I'm going back to what recently has been my favorite triad, is ultramarine blue. And you won't use large amounts of this, but I found that myself mixing more and more, mixed a lot over time on this. The Quin Burnt Scarlet. Got to order more of this. And I've got this mixture over here, and I'm not going to throw it out, but I'm just going to add some Quin Gold to it. I think I better put a little more blue out. Okay, we'll go with that. So, let's pull this out of here so that maybe you can see a little of it. Oh. Okay. Now, you should do better than me and use really clean water. And always have a paper towel handy. Okay. So let's wet him down again. I'm going to work with a smaller brush. Oh, this one. But I'm going to wet down an area. And I'm going to be looking at my photo. So you have one on your phone, and then you have the printed piece of the actual painting, which I think is probably, in this case, a little easier to follow. So just wet down part of him. Okay, so while that is settling in, let's mix some color here. I think I'm going to use the blue as my base, and I'm just going to mix other stuff into it. I want this to stay, I have to be careful. I don't want to, so I've got a bluish purple here. Oops, I spilled a little yellow over into it. Well, good, I'm going to need a little bit of yellow. I think I need more than that. Let's just pick up a touch of yellow at a time. It doesn't take much to turn this into a gray. Boy, I think that did it. So if you've got a scrap handy, you know, test your color. Well, there, that's very neutral right there. That's almost too neutral, but we'll work with it. Okay, so I'm getting a little of the extra off of the brush. And I'm looking at my duck, and I'm seeing that I've got this wing area that's darker, and then I've got almost an outline around a good portion of him. And then there's that solid area in the head. I tell you what, let's start in the head. Okay, so, oh, I didn't wet the head. No, we're not going to start there. We're going to start right back here. So I want to see how much this travels. I'm looking for just fuzzy edges on this. If it travels too much, then back off and wait. You can also work the center areas. See, when it travels out like that, it makes a fuzzy duckling out of him. I think it's traveling a little more than I wanted. So I think I'm going to work on the interior part more. Right now. Remember, this will be darker than the yellow stuff, so whatever that means, that's what it means. Okay. I don't know what that line was even for there. Okay, now let's go out here. You know, I've not even reloaded this brush. I've not needed to. So out along here now. Well, I'm just touching the tip of the brush. Well, what's happened is this got pretty fuzzy, but actually this duck is fuzzy and larger. I gave you sort of the minimum shape of him. If you look at the photo, he plumps out a bit more than that. So maybe I've done this much, and I'm going to be adding to that and working with that more. Do not think that you need to come in and keep messing with it because it doesn't look like the finished piece. This is steps along the way. I can't tell you how many people keep going at this point when they, trying to build on something, and that's where they get into trouble. So we're building him up gently, a little bit at a time. I just add a little water there. Okay, that's a nice beginning. Now let's go up here, and this time we will get his head wet. And I'm not going to get his eye wet. You can see that I did not wash my brush out well enough. Look at that. if you get a little bit of a gray cast onto his yellow, that's not a problem. He's got a gray cast everywhere, and we're going to build that as time goes by. So there we go. We got that all wet. Now that's going to need a little more control than we used down here. So let's go ahead and wet this spot down here too while we're waiting. And while we're waiting for that to dry, and this, and not all the way dry, just soak in, I should say, I'll just take a little bit of my gray, which you might have to stir it up because these are colors that are going to separate. And I will go down here on this dry foot and go ahead and paint a light layer of the dry foot. You notice I didn't paint a straight line across here. Am I in the right place? I kind of made it bumpy. Well, that looks pretty dark, doesn't it? Because this is going on dry paper, whereas that went on wet paper. So you can kind of see the difference of what happens here. Hey, if you leave some twinkles, even here on the feet, twinkle could be good. We're not going to get much in the way of twinkles up in his body because it's all wet and wet. Now, I'm doing this confidently and fast enough that things should be about right over here. So I'm twisting it to see if I've got some sheen. I still got some sheen up in here. So I'll start in the middle of his dark spot on his head. And I still have not even had to reload this brush. And it's still growing out there towards the outside. If it grows too much, I can always push it back with water. We're using colors that are pretty easily lifted. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry this brush off and pull up a little bit stronger paint. So let's see if maybe it won't run as much in this tiny band here. I'm going to paint to the edges of my lines here. Pick up some more. Oh, I wanted the edges to be a little bit fuzzy. Think that dried a little too much. Oh, there's some fuzz. See what happens down here. This little dark area is right about where I think his ear would be. You know what? I'm going to come on down here, and that's too strong. That's way too... Okay, so I'm washing my brush out really well. Get most of the water out of it. I'm going to come in here and wet this down. I'll just go on top of it, so I'm winding up wetting down both sides of it. I think I'm going to shove it a little bit there. See, I'm pushing because it's not moving much. Okay, that's going to be just fine when it's dry. We're going to wind up having to come back and add to it, if anything, later. So that's all good. This, we're going to leave that. See, this is all fuzzy soft. Now, over here, this got a little bit too dry, I do believe. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And just add water all along here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of it up. that's already been wet once, so it's wet on down in the paper. So this should stay wet quite a while. If you're really having trouble fighting with it, and maybe for whatever reason things seem to be drying on you too much, you can wet it down once, let it soak in, and then dampen the top again. And that will give you a little bit more time. Oh, look up here. See the edge that I got? Because that's where the water stopped. I need to come back and add a little bit more water in there. Okay, so I'm picking up my color. I'm over here. Whoa, I thought I mixed up more than I needed. Look at that. I didn't. Okay, so let's start right in the middle of the widest spot, or one of the widest spots. Yeah, that's doing about right, I think. A little bit of edge there. I don't want that to be too strong there. So what I'm going to do, need a little bit along here. He looks like a bandit right now, doesn't he? Okay, let's just come in and see if we need to soften anything. Oh, I thought I was going to need to soften this. I just needed to adjust my glasses. Now this is going to be fine. So if you're in doubt, come in and pull some of it to the inner part of the duck, because he's going to need more grays and more color in here. We don't get him all in one whack. In fact, I don't know how many layers I have on that original duck, but I have a lot. So I still didn't do anything down here. Much enough there. And we know that this area is going to get darker and it's going to have a shadow. Oh, I tell you what, let's just wet down a whole area here. I'm not necessarily doing this in the same order I did the first duck, so I have no idea what order I did the first duck in. Duckling. Okay. So I can take the rest of what I got here, just load that up on the brush if possible, and I can use considerably more color. And I don't care if that goes over the foot there. Kind of has a shadow that comes out this way, and then, oh, I ran out of wet area. Look at that. See that? Let's add a little water out here. It's just a shadow, soft edge shadow that goes off someplace. We don't even know where. And up under here, all I want to do is make a soft edge that comes up this way. See that? That's one way to get some nice hair on a kitty or something, but it's not working on the duck. So let's just add a little water to those edges. But you've got some directionality there. So even if you have just a little bit of that going on that's not even noticeable, or you don't pay attention to it, it still creates some feeling of contour and shape if you've got some sense of line curving around the underside, for instance. Okay, so I guess it's time to mix some more of this. And basically we are just doing the same stuff over and over again, except hopefully each time that we do it, we'll miss a little bit, and what we'll do is it won't be quite exactly the same gray. It'll be close but not identical, And that's good because that gives you more depth and more richness to it as you go. I learned this by, of course, not being able to duplicate it or not being careful enough about it, and then I saw it was better. That was many years ago. Many, many years ago. Okay. Doesn't take as much red as it does blue, and almost no yellow, just tiny bits of yellow. So sometimes you might get this to where it is a little bit of a blue-gray. You can see the color separating in here a little bit too, which I like. But sometimes it might be a little bit of a blue-gray. Sometimes it might go a little more reddish or a little more yellowish, have a feeling of being a little bit brown. And every time you do that, as you build, it just gets richer. Okay, so always add the yellow last. Oh, I don't have near enough red out here. Remember, the red is Quin Burnt Scarlet. So basically, unless hell freezes over, which could happen, we're going to be basically working with Quin Gold and or New Gamboge, Quin Burnt Scarlet, and Ultramarine. And that's going to be pretty much it. So see, as I mix this, see, I've got a really dark, dull purple. So all it needs is a touch of yellow. In fact, you could probably use that purple there. Well, I wouldn't, but you could probably. Won't take much yellow. I think it's going to need more than that, because I've got a lot of color in there. Oh, okay. See, I'm putting it on a little thinner there. Darn, that's awfully close to what I've got already. Let's put a little more red in there, just to liven things up. So again, I'm working with this same color, and I'm going to get my duck dry and go change water and come back. I filled in the other foot, and now I've got to stop this video. This is probably going to take about 4 of these because I have to keep them kind of short, or I have a problem. So it looks like you're halfway there or something. You're really not. There's a whole lot left on this. So I'll be back soon.